Okay, I think we'll start. It's a good time to start. So, welcome to another research seminar series brought to you by IATE, the International Association for Tourism Economics. I'm Professor Stephen Pratt. I'll be moderating this session, and we've got a great session ahead of us. It's the special editors session with Professor Gang Li and Professor Yang Yang. And so we'll be covering how the tips and tricks of how to provide good submissions to the journals, Annals of Tourism Research and Tourism Management, respectively. Let me just take a moment to briefly introduce our guests, our key speakers. So Professor Gang Li, many of you know and read his work. He's Professor of Tourism Economics and the Associate Head of the Surrey Business School and the Director of the Research Centre for Competitiveness for the Visitor Economy at the University of Surrey in the UK. As I mentioned, he's very well published and read in and around tourism economics, in economic analysis, forecasting, economic impacts, destination competitiveness. In addition to publishing over 100 articles in top journals, he's also consulted and collaborated with the European Commission, WTTC, the World Bank, PATA, and he's an elected fellow of the International Academy for the Study of Tourism, and of course a council member for IATE. So we look forward to hearing from Gang, who was recently appointed editor-in-chief or co-editor-in-chief of Annals of Tourism Research. And joining him is Professor Yang Yang. He's professor and department chair at the School of Sport, Tourism and Hospitality Management at Temple University here in the US, and executive director of the US Asia Center for Tourism and Hospitality Research. He holds the PhD in geography and the master's degrees in statistics and economics from University of Florida. Also published extensively, and we've read a lot of his work. He's a fellow of the International Association for the China Tourism Research, and he's senior editor for Tourism Management and associate editor for many other journals as well. I note he's got a revamped website, which I enjoy, the Professor Yang Squared. So I enjoy the maths there. So we're going to hear from Yang Yang as well. So let's start, and I'm going to open up and ask a question. If you could provide an overview of Annals of Tourism Research and Tourism Management, respectively, in terms of what's the scope of the journal, the target audience, and what sort of impact and relevance it has for our field. Let's start with you, Gang, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Steve. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Veronica and Aurel for organizing the IATE webinar series. It's a great initiative, and thank you, Steve, for moderating this session. It's a great pleasure to join the discussion of this important topic alongside Yang. With regard to the aims and the scope of Annals of Tourism Research, as many colleagues here know already, Annals of Tourism Research is one of the leading journals in tourism. It is a social science journal, so it promotes the tourism research across a wide range of social science disciplines. Apparently, economics is one of the key social science disciplines. The journal promotes the cutting-edge research, which demonstrates pioneering theory development, methodological innovation, or paradigm-shifting approaches. Also, Annals of Tourism Research advocate impactful research, which solve or address or contribute to addressing the global challenges in alignment with the United Nations Global Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. We would like to really show our research, tourism research, can be impactful, can solve and address real-world issues. So these are the aims of the journal. a little bit more about the unique characteristics of Annals of Tourism Research. Annals doesn't publish one-off special issues, but instead, Annals has at the moment about 20 curated article collections, or the general article compilations. These are theme-based collections, including the articles that historically published in the past and in the future based on a particular theme. For example, Yang, during COVID, managed a curated collection on COVID-related tourism research, and I co-curate a collection on tourism demand forecasting. So for colleagues who are interested in forecasting research, please have a look at the curated collection. So all of the relevant articles in this theme are compiled together. So it's very useful for our tourism scholars to use as references. Let me just stop here.
Thanks, Gang. Hand over to you, Yang.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on which part of the world you're in. It's a great honor to be here to have this conversation or workshop together with Professor Lee, and thanks for the organizing this wonderful event, Oriel and Veronica, and thanks Steve for moderating it. So I'm new to my position, and I'm also did very thorough kind of research on how the journal tourism management really fits into the entire IATE, the tourism economic audience. And we can find the tourism management articles and objectives online, but I really want to emphasize, based on my recent conversation with editor-in-chief Professor Cassie Xu, tourism management is very specific management-oriented journals. We really trying to position ourselves to have a close connection with the management discipline. That's why we also receive a lot of submissions from the mainstream business, mainstream management, finance, marketing, information system, and economics. And many of the disciplines, you can see they are very immediate application of the economic ideas and methods. And tourism management, as one of the leading tourism publicated journals of the world, we also very emphasize on the impact orientations. So that's why we have asking the authors to craft the impact statement, which has been very well received for many different purposes. And this impact statement, it's not just like abstract. It's the emphasis on the importance of this research in terms of the impact to the broad society. And when I am, when I was doing the historical research of the publication records of tourism management, we find that the tourism management is very friendly to tourism economics. I think every year we publish a lot of tourism economic papers, which keep me really busy as a new senior editor to handle the manuscripts, and which is very good. We really welcome the submission from tourism economists, and this strong tradition in tourism management to advocate tourism economics can be seen in many different aspects. And I just want to bring everyone's attention now at tourism management. We have the pre-registered series, which means you can have a starting without the empirical part, just doing the pre-register. Even though the original idea is more on the marketing side, but now I just handled one submission, which I can broadly categorize to the economics, because I think the author was planning to use econometric analysis for the empirical analysis. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of this opportunity by moving things forward. Yeah, I think that's all my part. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Yang. I'm going to stay on you, Yang. And is there any priority themes or future directions that for tourism management from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's very, very good question, right? So every time we will find our landscape of academic research is fast evolving. And at the same time, we have a lot of interesting topics from industry practitioners and from the government officers. We have to be very, very, are reactive to understand those phenomena. And for me, it's like I'm trying to really, really uh, emphasize on different aspects. One aspect is like to improve the research transparency. So including the pre-registration system of tourism management. The second one is that, many times, like, other economic journals, other business and management journals, to provide more details about the analysis, about, the data collection. And one thing is that we are promoting the use of supplementary material, which is not the part of the full length or not even the appendix, but will be online for people to read. And sometimes you may have the experience after a couple of rounds of revision, the reviewers really ask a lot. And we will recommend the authors to put them into the supplementary material. In some very real cases, you will find that the supplementary materials is even longer than the manuscript itself. It provides a lot of information. It improves the transparency of the research. The second one is that when we are trying to take a look, we find a lot of studies there are using more interesting data set. Some of them is not traditional economic database, but using different big data sources, non-structured data to move things forward. Likewise, we also observe a flooding of AI-related papers. Even though most of them might be related to the consumer behavior side or marketing side, but we still can see some submissions related to the economic side, finance side, accounting side, and trying to understand the impact of AI. This is, like what I said, a quick reflection of the industry trends, but at the same time, we want to make sure it still hold a high standard of academic rigor and, make contribution to the field. Just some my thoughts.
Great. Thanks. We'll come back. We'll come back to that. Gang, what about Annals of Tourism research in terms of priority areas and future directions?
Right. Overall, as you just mentioned, I think Annals of Tourism Research really feels responsible for promoting impactful research, which is related to the global challenges and the UN SDGs. So broadly speaking, we want to publish some research which has the broad impact into the industry, policy, and the society. We do not necessarily really have prefer certain hot topics and against certain cold topics. I think I always use this example in my other talks. For example, accessible tourism. Addressing the issues related to disability accessibility is still very much kind of overlooked or has not really gained this popularity in the research community. But this is so important, and this is directly relevant to one of the long-term sustainable development goals. We would really welcome more research into these directions to fill the gaps. Also, at the same time, INOS really welcome research which is relevant. Overall, tourism research is a field of applied research. We would like our research to address the most relevant and current issues. For example, this is relevant also to Yang. Yang is also a curator for a new curated collection, which is large language models in tourism and tourists. And this is a new initiative by Annals of Tourism Research. And actually, this curated collection is called for by two journals, including Annals of Tourism Research and the Information Processing and Management, which is a key journal in the information management system areas. So this also just shows that Annals of Tourism Research really welcomes the latest, the most cutting-edge development from both methodological perspective and theoretical perspective. So that is the one of the new development. And also overall, as I said, annual tourism research is a social science research. There are a lot of social science disciplines, and historically we welcome a wide range of researchers from different disciplinary background to research tourism phenomena from their respective discipline background. Now we would like to see more and more integration. So we encourage more interdisciplinary research. Now, for example, I repeatedly use Yang as an example because he's really a role model. He is one of the very earliest pioneering researchers in tourism, which brought in the spatial econometric techniques, which is an example of interdisciplinarity between geography and economics. And also over the last couple of years, we have seen the increasing popularity of behavioral economics in tourism. And again, that is a field of interdisciplinary research between psychology, consumer psychology, and economics. So we would really like to see more and more this kind of interdisciplinary exploration.
Yeah, that's good to know. I want to pick up on just if you can expand a little bit on, you touched a little bit on methods. Is there any particular methods that are preferred, or is there any common pitfalls that that authors should try to avoid? Maybe some tips and tricks in terms of how to position the paper or how to describe the methods that they're using. Let's stay with Gang.
Right. Thank you, Steve. Again, a very, very important and good question. I think most of us are doing economic research, so we are all quantitative researchers. And as we see, there have been a lot of statistical, econometric, and machine learning type of methodologies being developed, applied, and introduced into tourism research. So I think fundamentally we would say the choice of the method depends on the research question, depends on the research aim. We need to choose the right methods to match to help us to answer the defined research question. And for quantitative research, we all understand there are constantly innovation, evolution about those methods. So any new methods or newer version of the methods, they come out for a reason. They overcome certain limitations or the shortcomings, pitfalls of the previous methods, the traditional method or traditional versions of the method. I think for all of us, we need to just follow the latest development on the methodological side and make sure we have good understanding of the characteristics, the new features of the latest methods, and then how we can leverage the new features of the methods into our research. I think this is something to me is very important. It's difficult to say which method is preferred. Different topics will require different techniques. Recently, I and my co-authors, we adopt the one of the latest versions of the DID methods, the DID with multiple time periods. It was developed and published in 2021, and we found it's very relevant to a lot of research questions in our own field. So then we applied that method into our work, and then we drew some kind of further insights beyond the previous findings in the literature. So this is just one of the examples.
Nice. So authors are encouraged to read widely, and the main discipline, let's say economic main discipline journals, as well as obviously the tourism journals, tourism economics, annals of tourism research, and tourism management, for example, JTR. Thank you. Yang, what about your perspective on different methods that can be pursued and any common pitfalls to be avoided?
That's a very good question. I agree with Professor Lee in this regard because there's no specific any really preferred quantitative approaches. We are holding the highest academic rigors engorging the research method, as long as they are rigorous, as long as they are transparent, as long as they are theory based within the context of the research. I think that should be the right research method to pursue in a quantitative way. But I do have some of my own observations to share about common pitfalls to avoid. And I think one thing is that many submissions, they are using the fields in, let's say, mainstream or econ or other relevant fields to use their method to simply apply the tourism data. That's what I thought is a lack of contextualization. And I feel less interesting in that. Could be a recent paper published in Journal of Financial Economics, which is a very good finance journal. But if you are just applying the same method to the tourism hospitality data, I don't see a high relevance, especially if you can persuade convincing me this is a good contextualization. Because I think one thing is about contextualization. What is the real contribution you're going to put in the tourism hospitality? Or in other words, is that how our industry is different from the general or in other sectors, and how we are going to elevate your findings to the theoretical contribution to the literature, because I think that's a very, very relevant one. I think the second relevant one is that you will find that in some paper, they are putting a lot of quantitative approaches together without a coherent logic flows. And some of them looks very, very sophisticated and advanced, but you will find that I honestly don't know why so many seemingly advanced quantitative methods are putting together. And I at the same time, I did not see some analysis, in-depth analysis on the things. So I think that's another pitfalls I would recommend to avoid when submitting your manuscript to top journals like Tourism Management and Annals and JTR and etc. And number three is that from our economics perspective, we always want to see causality instead of association. Of course, this can be handled in so many different ways, experiment, DID, like what Dr. Lee said. But I really, really, because I think that's an easy challenge from the reviewer's perspective, right? When you're presenting the result, I think it's just statistic association. How we're going to convince the readers, the reviewers, and the editors is a causality. Of course, you can have different ways to draw on the causality things. And sometimes I have to share that just my personal opinion. I don't think, sometimes the Granger causality can be directly translated to the let's see, the industry-related causality based on my understanding. So there are some different ways to see that, but I think that's another things I want to discuss. And the last point is that sometimes people ask me, how can you gauge the quality in an efficient way? Because I think for the economic papers, one quick way to check the quality might just focusing on your formula and equations. And for me, I'm particularly sensitive on finding the subscripts of formulas and equations. If you don't know the methods, if you just copy paste from somewhere, and you will find even within the same manuscript, different formulas, different equations are formatted in a very different ways. There's a lack of consistency. That means that gives me a less confidence to trust your ability to analyze data, to conduct meaningful econometric or economic quantitative study. And just like, some of my observations and thank you.
Yeah, and that segues nicely into suggestions or tips for PhD students or early career researchers that are trying to get
I have
published
another point for them, but okay.
in the area? So, I know you're both very experienced PhD supervisors and had many successful students and extensively. And as many of us know, it's becoming more and more difficult to publish with so many submissions to the journals. And maybe university administrators requiring a lot of published papers to get jobs, for example. So what would your advice be to early career researchers and PhD students? Yang, I'll start with you in terms of trying to get published.
I think one of my answer to this is that you need to really, really love what you are doing. You need to really, really understand a lot of things. And the only way that can motivate you is that you really like it. You love it. It's not just like, you mechanically check that I finished this manuscript. Some people may say that, I'm using some published journal articles as template. I developed this manuscript based on that. I filled in everything, estimation, hypothesis, literature review. Sometimes you will find that if it's a good manuscript, if it's a good paper, when you read the manuscript, you can feel the love from authors, and you can see the passion, and you can read, you can feel the enthusiasm. So my suggestion is that if you are doing some research, you really need to love it, and don't say that it's my supervisor asked me to do as like from the coursework. You really, really need to have the passion to motivate you to elevate that to the next level. Because I think that is a very important part. And the second part is that now we are having a lot of software or package to help you to do the let's say the mindset mapping sometimes. I think keep a very good habit of note taking. It's good. And sometimes you will have ideas pop up randomly. Or if you read some papers, you have the ideas, trying to take those ideas, then as quickly as possible, and trying to figure out a way to organize it. And my third suggestion is that please have a very solid foundation. And this foundation will determine how successful you are in the next 20 years. And trust me, once you get out of the PhD area, you don't have the luxury to really construct a solid foundation. We wish we have, but based on my experience, you have teaching, you have other service duties, which is it's hard to balance. You don't have the complete chunk of time that can make you so dedicated to the, let's see, to get the familiar skill set specifically for certain series, certain knowledge. Because I think, you really, really need to do a solid foundation. And sometimes it's not just for paper publishing. And probably after 10 years, after 11 years, you say, okay, during my PhD time, I knew a little bit about this model, so I can pick up it very, very easily. And guess what? The reason I'm saying the next 20 years, because things are so fast evolve, because sometimes you can't guarantee that your knowledge will not be forever outdated, something like that. So, but I think my suggestion to the PhD is that sometimes you want to make this investment more long-term oriented, spend time to make sure that you have very solid foundation in the area you really have the passion. We're just not specific about journal article submission, but
Thank you. Good advice. And Gun?
I totally agree with Yang. I think a solid foundation is definitely a key. PhD programs are training programs. And that is really probably the last opportunity for anyone who would like to be a full-time learner. So really, I think for our PhD students, you should really spend a lot of time, really dive into the mainstream literature. If you are researching, let's say, tourism phenomena from an economic perspective, then instead of just reading tourism articles, tourism papers, and tourism books, you really need to go back to your main disciplinary foundation, read literature, read the theories, the books in economics rather than just in tourism. And also, as we just mentioned, the methodological development is fast, is innovative, and is revolutionary. And really, I think for PhD students, if you are able to master a wider range of advanced tools, then that means you will have better potential to develop your career further and better, just as Yang said. So to me, also the training, the rigorous training during the PhD program is very, very important. And if I know nearly every single PhD student would like to publish their work, 3-4 years work in a top tier journal. If that is the goal, I think for those students, you really should spend enough time working together with your supervisors at the very beginning of your journey. Look at your research proposal, whether your proposed research, the theoretical framework, the methodology is cutting edge, is the latest, whether that give you the potential to target the top tier journals. If you are using very classical theory, classical methods, it may appear just like a new case study. And if that is the research design, regardless of how good you are with executing the quantitative methods with your writing, in the end, it will not be accepted by a top-tier journal. I think as TM, GTR, and annals, I think the common publication quality criteria is you have to demonstrate significant theory development or methodological innovation or both. So I think spending enough time, don't rush into collecting data, analyzing data, writing your codes, programs. Before then, look at your proposal, look at your research design, whether there's a potential to push further before you action it. And in terms of publications into top tier journals, I also observed a lot over the last few years. In the last 3.5 years, I was the associate editor for tourism management, and now I'm coordinating papers for annals. We see a lot of submissions of tourism economics papers, which appear to be just like a case study. I think this is not enough for top tier journals. Now, here I wouldn't say this kind of applied research is not valuable. It's still valid. It's just matching your expectation and the journal's expectation. If you are expecting to publish your paper in the top tier journal, you need to understand the quality standards of the top tier journals. And for annals and as well as tourism management, we are really expecting some innovative ideas, some theory development going beyond just a case study. And sometimes you do include the latest quantitative econometric methods, but your study from the beginning to the end is just about testing one particular phenomenon. For example, you may test using the DID, you can use the latest DID method, but to just test the impact of tourism policy in a particular empirical context. This is just a case study. What we would like to see as a top-tier journal is whether your findings have more generalized implications to other researchers and to other contexts. So in addition to just analyzing the impact of this particular policy in this particular location, whether you can broaden your findings, you can advocate analytical framework or a new perspective. And this perspective can go beyond your empirical case. So you position your paper as advocating a new perspective or a new analytical framework with the illustration of your framework in a particular empirical context. If you tell such a story, it will be more appealing and it will lift up the level of your contribution beyond just a case study. Yeah.
That's great advice, Gang. I want to pivot to a very hot topic at the moment, and I just saw it on Trinet, and I'd like to know, and maybe the listeners would also like to know, for the two journals, Annals of Tourism Research and Tourism Management, what is the philosophy or approach to authors? Well, two parts. One, authors using AI, and two, reviewers using AI. We'll start with Gang.
Yeah. I think since both tourism management and annals of tourism research belong to the same publishing house, Elsevier, and Elsevier has the common AI policy across all of the journals they publish. I think at the moment, my understanding, I think colleagues can read the AI policy of Elsevier on the publisher's website. Authors are allowed to use generative AI to some extent, but they need to disclose how they use it, in what aspect, where they use the generative AI in the process of the research and writing the paper. This need to be transparent and need to be disclosed. But there's no restriction of for the authors from using generative AI, but they need to disclose. And from our in general common sense, you cannot ask generative AI to write the entire paper for you. And recently, actually, we handled a paper in Annals, and there was a clear evidence the paper was written by AI because the references were fake. They didn't exist. This is definitely is not allowed. So this is the author's perspective. Certain editing is okay, or during the initial stage of generating ideas, yeah, you can go to all of the generative AI tools to get some ideas to help you to shape your research question, that's fine. But in the end, it needs to be delivered by yourself. And the AI still at the moment is not allowed to be listed as a co-author because of the accountability. If there's any issue with the paper, with the data, with the finding, the ethical issues, we cannot sue AI. That's just so simple. So AI can aid the research process, but it cannot replace the authors. Well, for the reviewers, we also received some feedback and comments from authors saying they suspected that some of the comments were written by AI rather than human. And according to the publisher's policy, it's definitely not allowed to use AI for the review. There are many reasons, and one of the reasons is to respect the intellectual property of the authors. You cannot upload the author's unpublished papers into any of the AI system. So this is the journal's policy, and it's my understanding of the policy.
Thanks, Kang. And Yang, anything to add on AI use?
I think Professor Lee just because the both journals are under the same publisher, so very similar policies there. So we also have a lot of concerns or challenge associated with AI from both authors' perspective and reviewers' perspective, and we find out some, in addition to the text, some image or diagram are highly likely to be generated by AI. But I don't think the author is close. Because we think, if you are working on a simple diagram, like flowchart things, you can easily edit. It's not worthwhile to use AI. That raised the potential concern from me, like what's your level of professionalism, and what's the dedication to the excellence in your research project. At the same time, I feel that the reviewers are using AI, even though highly likely, because we don't have any strong evidence, or even though nowadays a lot of what we call the AI detector, but they have limitations. That's just for reference purpose. It can't be used as strong evidence. I think in a very, very specific scenario is that I think this is not happening in tourism management. In some other journals I have been working on is that, we have two reviewers provide very similar feedback. Highly likely they are using the same generative AI to generate review feedback. And I don't think that's going to be fair for authors, right? Sometimes, even though their submissions got rejected, but they can get improved based on the constructive feedback from the reviewers. So I think this really endangers the entire ecology of our academia field, which make me really, really nervous about that. But guess what? I think over long run, in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, AI can be fast evolved, become more capable of not just generating the content. If you read about AI generated content, you get that very strong feeling. Oh my gosh, this is highly likely to be generated by AI. Or sometimes you have different components of the manuscript. Some parts is extremely AI-like, and some of them is very poor writing quality, which is 100% it's not AI generated. And if you combine them together, as of course, one thing is about quality, consistency, right? Some people need to take lead on that when you are working on the entire manuscript out. And second one is that wow, this really add a lot of burden on the editor side. And I think in future, and probably people will start complaining why the editor can block out this kind of potentially AI generated things. One thing is that don't have strong evidence whether it's AI generated or not. And second one is that, and we can't sorrowfully rate the entire manuscript from the first sentence to last sentence. So I think this is something really, really emerging in the field, not just tourism, hospitality, and all of us are learning and how to become a responsible author. So that might be another piece of advice to the junior faculty, trying to be responsible. Don't take the risk. You will find, wow, why those people are publishing so much. So probably there's a shortcut I can use to AI generate content. Don't do that, right? So this is not the professional way to handle it. To automatically generate content. I heard that there are different ways brainstorming to help you collect the literature, to help you to find the research data, to help you program. I think that is reasonable, but it still need to be disclosed in the AI disclosure to some extent. But those content generating is really, really make me uncomfortable. And sometimes, even though the author declares this, that AI has been used to polish the language, but I suspect that from what is presented based on the language quality of previous submission of those authors, I highly doubt whether it's only used for polishing.
Right. Yeah, it's a big unknown, I guess, at the moment in lots of areas. Just last quick question before we open it up to questions. Say author gets a chance to revise and resubmit. Any quick advice on how they should go about it to push it out, get it over the line to an acceptance? Jan?
Okay. So the first thing I have to say, sometimes you get paper rejected. That doesn't necessarily mean this is not a good good article. That's just like, because all the we are econometricians or economic research, we know that probably just random error. And sometimes, as the editor, we need to respect the entire process, right? We have to respect the entire process, and probably something just not working out. I saw a lot of examples get rejected by one journal and potentially possibly end up in an even better journal. Okay, so rejection doesn't mean anything. Just move up to the next outlet after addressing or considering other comments from reviewers. A second one, my personal suggestion: don't take reviewers' comments personally. They are just doing their job. Okay. Be respectful, be professional in handling those comments. Are all those comments reasonable? I don't know, right? And sometimes I will receive the complaining email saying that, this comment is not extremely professional or reasonable. I agree to some extent, right? But you can have your rebuttal in a respectful way to share your opinion, right? If you think that's the way you want to pursue, right? So I think that's very important to really handle the reviewers' comments in a professional manner. And number three is that don't never estimate the efforts in revising the manuscript. And I heard from a lot of authors, and also based on my own experience, is sometimes you will find that the revision process, the revision takes even longer time than preparing the manuscript, which has become more and more normal or common nowadays. For example, they may ask, you want to try a different data set. You want to collect more data on certain variables. You want to consider instrumental variables, something, etc. That creates a lot of issues. And, in some marketing submission, they will ask you, you need to add 2 more experiments to make sure, blah. So be prepared for that. Okay. And finally is that if you get a revision, revise, and resubmit letter, you should feel very grateful, because nowadays only very few submissions will reach that stage to get the privilege to revise and resubmit. Just my personal
Thanks,
thought.
Yang. Anything to add, Gang, on this?
Yeah, I also agree with Yang. Firstly, the attitude. Really, I think if especially our PhD students or the early career researchers, we all understand how important having a very good top-tier journal publication is for your career development especially the early stage. Then if you submit the paper to a top-tier journal like Tourism Management or Annals, really both journals have very high desk rejection rate. If you have the chance to go through the review process, really cherish the opportunity, give 120% of your effort into the revision. In the end, only less than 10% of the papers can get published. But if you get the chance not to receive a desk rejection, and then that means you probably have about 1/3 of the chance to succeed in the end. And whether you will succeed, you're moving from that 1/3 chance to the final success, it really depends on how you address the comments from reviewers. So be transparent, confident, respectful, thorough, and objective. I think these are all useful advices, in my personal opinion, from my own experiences. For example, I coordinated quite a few papers in tourism economics, where the reviewers give comments to the authors asking them to justify why you included those variables in your equation, in your model. You didn't justify. The thorough and objective response would be to give a theoretical explanation why you feel that variable should appear as one of the independent variables. But very often, some researchers, either they are a bit lazy or they are not really experienced or knowledgeable enough. They simply just quoted a couple of published papers saying, because Yang used that variable in the paper, so I use it. This kind of response is not thorough, and normally it will not end up well. So demonstrate your knowledge and give a thorough explanation.
Excellent. All right. Well, there's been lots to think about, and it may have stimulated some questions or queries from our listeners. So we'll open it up to questions. You can raise your hand and unmute if you have some comments or questions.